Good morning. I'm George Latimer, Westchester County Executive. Today is Wednesday, September 2nd, and yesterday when the calendar turned into September, September 1st, it's one of those transitional days, and a lot nicer day yesterday than it is today, but it's one of those transitional days where you feel like you're leaving a defined season and you're entering another season. And the minute the calendar turns to September, whether here in New York or elsewhere in the nation, we're very mindful of a very somber commemoration that follows almost immediately Labor Day weekend and back to school. And that is the recollection of what happened on September 11th, 2001, with the terrorist attacks that affected the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and the skies over the United States. For those of us of a certain age, we remember where we were that day. And what's also striking for those of us of a certain age is to think that 19 years have passed, 19 years, almost 2 decades, since the incident happened. And it was such a jarring thing to our society and to us as individuals that it's hard to this day to not feel like it's something that just didn't happen last week. It's that close to us in terms of its impact. In this period of time, we have to decide as a society, how do we remember this day? Because it was a day of death and a day of tragedy, but it was also a day where people showed a tremendous spirit that went well beyond what you could have expected. The sacrifice that went on to save lives that day in the World Trade Center towers, in the Pentagon, the bravery that was shown in an airplane in the skies over Pennsylvania. And the outgrowth of remembering 9/11 is really twofold. Number one, to remember the day, to remember the tragedy, to remember the individuals. That is why we're here at Kensico Dam Plaza in front of the Rising, which is a sculpture that was created under my predecessor, County Executive Andy Spano's tenure, and was funded by private money as a permanent remembrance here in Westchester County for the people that were lost, and primarily because Westchester lost quite a lot of our residents that day. But what happened after that was also important. The pile that existed when the towers came down and the bravery that was shown by men and women who volunteered to clean up that pile slowly and meticulously. And many of them have become ill and have passed away as well by 9/11 related deaths. All of that creates a remembrance that's very somber. But the volunteerism that came out of the working on the pile, the volunteer spirit that took individuals up the towers to save lives, is what you gain out of this experience that has something you can build on and something good. And we're very, very happy as Westchester County that we've partnered with Volunteer New York to focus on that element of volunteerism that was in effect that day and in the aftermath of that day, and now can also symbolize for us what 9/11 is. Now, the Volunteer New York organization has not only taken 9/11 and tried to repurpose it with a volunteer spirit, but they've also done the same that would be applied to Martin Luther King Day, in which we remember a great American who died tragically, but we take that remembrance and we turn it into a day of volunteer spirit. And I think we owe a debt of gratitude here in this county for Volunteer New York, the leadership that it's had over the years and the leadership it has right now to be able to help us deal with this. We're going to encourage you, as you hear the words in a second when we introduce Jeanette Gisbert to share some thoughts on behalf of the organization. We want you to register to be involved in some service that day. Because we are going to be having Westchester County a virtual ceremony here at 3 o'clock online. You'll see it from the comfort of wherever you watch your online situations. There will be free time to be able to give back, to donate, to do something of value in the society, which we all should be doing anyway, but this is a good touch point for that. And those volunteer opportunities don't begin on 9/11, they begin right now, and they go through this period of time. Jeanette's going to tell you in a second that they focused on a particular topic, food insecurity, and why that's important. She'll explain and how you can be involved in helping make 9/11 be both a commemoration of the sacrifice of that day and a continuation of the sacrifice of volunteerism through the days to come. So let me introduce Jeanette Gisbert, who's the Executive Director of Volunteer New York. She's here with her colleague, Nicole Lawrence. And Jeanette has taken on this responsibility. You may recall that we worked very closely with Elisa Keston, her predecessor, but Jeanette in her own right is quite a leader, and she's leading quite an organization. Jeanette.
Thank you so much, County Executive Latimer, and thank you so much for your continued partnership in supporting Volunteer New York and in the spirit of volunteerism as part of 9/11, but really 365 days a year. So thank you. For 70 years, Volunteer New York has worked in partnership with hundreds of local nonprofits to inspire individuals to get off the sidelines and to volunteer in their community. Last year, we inspired over 35,000 individuals, families, and groups to volunteer throughout Westchester, Rockland, and Putnam counties. That is a 30% increase over the past year, in part due to the number of individuals stepping forward in support of our community as a result of COVID-19. Combined, these volunteers contributed more than 362,000 hours of service to more than 300 nonprofits, valued at over $11.7 million to our community. For the past 10 years, Volunteer New York has planned and implemented a Community Action Day on 9/11, providing our local community an opportunity to join thousands of individuals across the country as they honor the memory of those lost on September 11th, 2001. I'm humbled to say that over that time, we have had over 10,000 volunteers join us as part of those efforts. As has been the case for so much over the last 6 months, Volunteer New York had to reimagine how we would offer this opportunity this year. So the Volunteer New York team does what it does best, surveying community needs so that we can connect people power to where it is most needed. Ultimately, we decided that we would focus the power of community and volunteering on a single goal: fighting food insecurity, an issue that has emerged as a pressing community need, a greater pressing community need throughout the country and especially here in Westchester. This 9/11 Day, sign up to support the COVID-19 Relief Healthy Food Drive happening now through Friday, September 11th. We have partnered with 12 local food pantries, 10 here in Westchester County, for a healthy food drive to help alleviate this intense and timely need. To register and to receive a list of approved and requested healthy donated items, visit volunteernewyork/service. This drive will benefit local food pantries, including Caring for the Homeless of Peekskill in Peekskill, Hope Community Services in New Rochelle, the Community Food Pantry of Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow in Tarrytown, the Mount Kisco Interfaith Food Pantry in Mount Kisco, the Don Bosco Community Center in Port Chester, the United Community Center of Westchester in New Rochelle, the Thomas Slater Center in White Plains, Life Progressive Services Group in Mount Vernon, and the Ossining Food Pantry in Ossining. We also wanted to take this time to inform and educate our community about this pressing issue. As such, last evening we held a State of Hunger, a special 9/11 Day panel discussion. Nonprofit leaders and food insecurity experts joined to discuss the state of hunger in Westchester and ways that we as a community can respond. Over 100 individuals joined the conversation, and a recording of this event will be available on our website soon. None of these efforts would be possible with the support of the local partners who understand the impact people power has on our community. There has been no stronger supporter year after year for our 9/11 Serve and Remember event from the business community than Roberson Oil and its CEO, David Singer. They once again are this year's major sponsor. I'd also would like to thank and acknowledge individual project sponsors: Sterling National Bank, Levitt First, Alliance Bernstein, and the law firm of Anea Scallion and Sirignano. In planning this year's event, we have been fortunate to continue our tremendous partnership with the county and their fabulous communications team. Thank you so much for your continued flexibility. And by we, I absolutely do not mean me. Kudos to Nicole Lawrence, who is the wizard behind the curtain at Volunteer New York for this 9/11 Community-Wide Action Day, and to Tony Fasciano, our amazingly talented communications director, and all of our colleagues at Volunteer New York. As County Executive Latimer said, we are approaching the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And I can't help but think about the 9/11 families who worked so hard to get September 11th designated as a national day of doing good. Long after there are fewer of us who have that date and the aftermath seared in our brains, let there be people of all ages, stages, and abilities who instinctively stop to do a good deed, to make a difference, to remember. That is their legacy. At Volunteer New York, we've said often over the last few months that we've had to cancel much, but community is not canceled. I hope you will join us in community this 9/11. All of the details and links to register can be found again at volunteernewyork.org/service. You can also call Volunteer New York at 914-948-4452. Register today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeanette. We appreciate it. In a few seconds, we'll open it up to some questions, and then if any of our friends in the press want to ask a question either to Jeanette or to myself, we'd be happy to do that. I want to recognize our Commissioner of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation has joined us here on this beautiful day. Kathy O'Connor heads the department that manages 55 of these facilities that include everything you can imagine: nature trails and golf courses and miniature golf courses, an amusement park that's closed this year, but a Kensico Dam Plaza that's been very much opened and enjoyed by many, if not on a rainy day, on most other days. So, Kathy, thank you. She and her team were just recognized last night by the Westchester Parks Foundation for their outstanding work, and we join in saluting them for that. Just a final thought, and then we'll go to questions. For those who remember the actual day itself, September 11th, 2001, and the aftermath of it, the nation went through a profound incident, and it brought us together. We were as unified as a people as I can ever remember in my life, and I've lived quite a few years now. And it wasn't a unity that was based upon agreement on political issues or priorities, but it was a unity and understanding that we had a common destiny as a people, and we needed to have common purpose if we were going to get through that specific moment in time and the things that came out of that. And there are times in the society, certainly at the moment, where unity seems to be impossible to find. People can't seem to agree, and worse than that, they can't seem to respectfully disagree. That we've lost our sense that we are all Americans together. When those towers went down, and those 3,000 people died, nobody asked them whether they were Democrats or Republicans. Nobody asked them whether they were Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, or of no religious affiliation. Nobody did a calculation on how many women and how many men and how many those with different sexual identities or ages or who was fat or who was skinny. The towers went down, 3,000 people died, and they died in all of the diversity that we as Americans live. And so when we come to this commemoration, we remember those that have died, the individuals, the human beings. I knew some of these people personally. I worked with one of them. A couple of them were people I knew in my home community. We remember the geopolitical realities that led to other things at that time. But most of all, we see common purpose between all Americans. And that's the basis upon which Volunteer New York moves forward. That we have a common purpose as Americans, as Westchester residents. We have a common destiny, whether we want to admit it or not. And we advance that by working together. And that's exactly what Volunteer New York has given us the platform to be able to do. I hope we'll all take advantage of that. And we certainly are very proud to be partners with Volunteer New York on this program and others. So with that, if there are any questions from the press, if you want to direct them to Jeanette, I'll step out. If you want to direct them to me, I'll take it. Or we can just stand here in the rain. That's fine, too. Whatever you think is best. Martin.
Once they register,
Sure. So once they register, they'll receive a customized email with all of the information that they need. So they'll be able to register for a specific food pantry, likely the one that's closest to them in their hometown. And then what we've tried to do this year, Martin, is really work with each food pantry to identify specific items that they may be having a hard time getting or are more perhaps culturally appropriate for their participants. And so you'll get a list of those items with directions about next steps. Thank you. Hi, Kurt.
I listened to what you were saying earlier, and that was that in the beginning you said your organization finds out where they want to appropriate, the resources and the funds. And how did it come about that you wanted to go into the food assistance for the victims of COVID?
Sure. So the question was about how did we decide that we would focus on food insecurity? And so it's a great question because at Volunteer New York, we tend to be issue agnostic, right? We are about harnessing people power in support of all of our community and all of the issues that we face, 365 days a year. But in speaking with our community partners, we have over 100 site visits every year where we are out in the community talking to nonprofits about how volunteers can help them accomplish their mission. And through those conversations, this issue of food insecurity started to bubble up, not only from the traditional food pantries and soup kitchens that you might expect, but also from organizations that provide more wraparound services as well. And so we felt that this would be kind of a safe and appropriate way for individuals to engage while also helping to meet a pressing community need. Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Jeanette, Nicole, Kathy,
Thank you.
thank you all for being here. Have a nice day, and we'll see you online on 9/11.